When you choose Bianchi Honda, you can focus on the road before you. Forget the obstacles and feel the road. Focus on being there, being present. Feel in the moment and feel confident in your Honda. Lease the safe and reliable 2019 Honda CR-V EX all-wheel drive for only $219 per month. Bianchi Honda, your road starts here.
BianchiHonda.com.
It's good to see you, Jack. It's good to get compliments like that.
Yeah, always good to talk to you. And before we get to the Clarion game look back, so I was not in attendance, but Alex and I had to switch. So he was on the call for the game at Kutztown. And, it seemed like you guys were right there at halftime. You had a couple of good drives on offense in the early going. So what was your mindset? I mean, were you pleased? You're down 14-3, but, again, you were able to move the ball a little bit in that first half.
Yeah, for as poorly as I thought we played against Westchester, I thought we bounced back and played much, much better against Kutztown. Granted, those are two really good football teams. I think Kutztown's a really good team. But yeah, we moved the ball up and down the field. The focus this week with the offense is just finishing those drives. We spent some more time 11-11 football in the red zone. It's something we have to work on, something defensively we struggled with last year. So I think we'll get that cleaned up, but we played much, much better on both sides of the ball. And we were in there against a very explosive offense who had their way with two teams pretty much before we played them, that 14-3 score. We give up one kind of early in that second half. The kids didn't panic out a ton. There wasn't a ton of adversity where I said last week before, emotionally we didn't handle the ups and downs of a football game. I thought this Kutztown game, even when we hit adversity, the kids really refocused and handled it really well.
And one of the reasons why you were able to move the ball, it was an issue the first 2 weeks, is you were able to run the ball with Melvin Blanks. Was that anything schematically you did differently? How was it that you were able to have success with Blanks on the ground?
No, I think it's always been there, Jack. I just think it was, the offense is new and we're still learning it, and they're seeing different fronts and different schemes. It's just us getting better with time. The more that we run it, the more we see it, the different schemes that we get. I think we just executed much better. I don't know there's a crystal ball with it. I just think it came down to execution.
And then everything new is kind of nice. Let's talk about this on the show that, you're starting almost like a new season now with Clarion as you get into PSAC West play. I'm guessing, given the way it's gone so far, that you like that rule that the crossover games are not part of the standings. It comes to PSAC West standings, right?
Sure, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a way to revitalize a little bit. And we've had two really good football teams from the East to play. We kind of found out, where we're trying to get to, but it really tested us. And we already know that the PSAC West is a bear. I mean, Clarion's averaging 40 points right now and scoring the ball at will on some people, and played a really good Shepherd team that we know is nationally always in the playoffs pretty good last week. So it doesn't get easier, but it's a good litmus test for us just to be able to play that competition and then refocus, knowing that we're 3 games into the season and now we're about to start our league.
So you mentioned Clarion, and now you get them 1 o'clock homecoming at McConnell Family Stadium. They score 40 points and they're balanced. They average over 200 rushing, 200 passing. So when you see a team like that that's so balanced, how do you go about, as the defensive coordinator, also as you're the head coach, to attacking them, attacking their offense?
Yeah, I think it still comes down to taking one part that you think that's a little bit more successful than the other, and I'm not going to get into exactly what that is. But the modern offense nowadays takes what you give them, and depending on who they're playing, whether it's Lockhaven or who they played last week at Shepherd, there were different schematic things with the RPO offense, or just different things they did that kind of determined how they were going to beat you, whether it was running the ball or throwing it. And they used multiple quarterbacks. I'm assuming that we're going to see that on Saturday also, and they're kind of similar but different in their own different ways. But defensively, they get after you, and the defense kind of dictates a lot of a game. I know if the defense goes out and gets some 3 and outs and creates some field position, you become more of a running team. So I think the games have dictated a little bit about what they've done. But going into Saturday, it's going to be what do we take away is probably going to be the other part that they go to.
Now, last year, it was an odd game. The weather was odd. You got the safety to go ahead. You ended up losing in that game at Clarion 14-9. Now, obviously, you got new players, you got new coaches. Is there anything when you look at that film that you can take away and say, we did this really well, let's try to get back to that, or is it just a whole new deal?
I think it's a whole new. I think everything with us is whole new. I mean, last year I kind of think that was the game where Jimmy Keefe fractured his collarbone. Anthony Howard got hurt with a concussion, was done for the year. We had a lot of injuries that happened just that game, and without putting it, we watched a little bit of it, but I think schematically both teams are much different than they were, so it doesn't really help you. But it helps you to where you're going to match up. So, it's always been a good game against Clarion. One way or another, it's always normally come down to the fourth quarter. But I think that no matter who we line up, this first week going into the PSAC West, we're still battling ourselves a little bit, not turning the ball over, making sure that we're ending each offensive series with a kick, whether it's extra point, field goal, or punt. And it's just continue to execute on both sides of the ball because there's a lot of new faces, a lot of new schemes, a lot of new everything.
Well, and you mentioned execution and you mentioned the kicking, and I mentioned it because he's a local product. Eric Scarpino, and again, I wasn't there last week, but man, he has a heck of a leg when I'm watching him kick some of these field goals and watching him in practice. You may have found a local gem here.
Yeah, Scarp has done a great job for us. Him and Brian Streibel. I know when we move beyond the 30, right now Brian Streibel's been the guy that will run into the game. He had the first attempt. I think it was at Westchester. the ball was farther back. Scarpino's big thing is he's extremely consistent from the 20-yard line in, and he's just gotten better. And a lot of that's attributed to the fact that he's here locally, so he's able to stay in the summer. But the kid's worked on his body, his strength in his leg, his torque. He's done all the things from a muscular standpoint to get him in position to where he's at today, because you got to obviously have a good leg. His accuracy's been there, but his leg hasn't been strong enough. Now it is, and now he's doing a good job with it.
I guess his brother's there too, so maybe it could be like the lineage where Tennessee had the same family of punters for like 15 years there, and the name escapes me at the moment, but if Mike Fenner were here, he'd be able to tell me. One of the things you mentioned gets into a tight game in the fourth quarter, and a big part of that then is execution, not making mistakes, and one of the things I noticed is you guys really cut down on the penalties in that last game.
Yeah, that's something we focused. You're going to have some procedure things that, that they happen every so often, but the personal fouls are inexcusable. That's a discipline thing. They want to make sure that the Westchester game, wasn't us from a penalty standpoint. But by week, I think when we're starting to get more comfortable with what we're running, the holding calls get less. But kind of, Jack, it ends up kind of, and I'm not blaming the referee, so I don't want this to go back on that part of it, but it ends up with the crew that you get and what particular things they're looking for and that game, and that's kind of what I found out. In the end, the refs don't determine whether we're going to win or lose. We got to make more plays than the other team, but yes, we've focused on the things that we can control from a penalty standpoint and really have harped on during the course of the week.
It's so frustrating to watch, especially punt returns on TV, NFL, college. I mean, every time you're just waiting for it. It really is.
The block in the back.
The block in the back, the holding. It's really frustrating. It makes, especially when you're watching the Cleveland Browns. It's just not fun to watch in general. So, I mean, obviously now a huge game. You're going to have a great crowd. When you look at this, I know you said it's about, picking one thing or something, taking away defensively. So on offense, what would you say is one or two of the biggest keys in order to coming out, controlling the ball, winning this football game?
Oh, for us on offense?
For you,
Yeah, execution. We have to be able to run the ball. I mean, that's our MO. I mean, last week we went into it, and I think there were some things there in the pass game that actually helped our run game. But for us, we continue to want to be able to run the ball. It makes our play action game and all those other things stand out. The big thing for us is, we got to make sure that we're churning our first downs. We did a great job with the clock last week against an explosive offense like Kutztown, and now you're facing another offense that's averaging 40 points a game. We want to score whenever we possibly can, but to maintain drives and not have our 3 and outs, that's a big deal for us. But our big focus is we got to score once we get to the red zone. I mean, that was our Achilles heel last week. We're talented enough to get it done, and I'm waiting for us to take that next step this week.
One of the guys you mentioned being able to move the ball. I mean, Joey Cox has just been out of this world so far this year as far as a guy that Jimmy Keefe can find on third down. I mean, you knew he was good. He was a returning guy for you. Has his play surprised you at all? Did you sense that he was going to have a huge year like this when you saw him in camp?
If you know Joe, he's a tough kid. It takes a special person to be able to play between the hashes. And if you watch Joey Cox, all 5'7" or whatever he is, he's not afraid to go over the middle, jump up, and give his body up. He takes contact on sometimes where you're kind of wishing he didn't, but he's a tough kid. And that builds a lot of trust with just the coaching staff, the players, everybody else. He's 1,000 miles per hour in practice. The kid cares a ton about what's going on. So, yeah, he has all the characteristics of a person that you trust. Obviously we want him to be able to play in the middle of the field and handle those things, but he's a great kid.
And then from an injury perspective, how did you come out of that Kutztown game?
Good. I think we were a little bit banged up going into the Kutztown game. I think we got a little bit healthier coming out of it.
All right, well, so that's good, and we've got homecoming, Gannon and Clarion, 1 o'clock at McConnell Family Stadium. Coach, it should be a fun atmosphere. I hope the weather's okay. It looks like it's going to be fine. Looks like it's going to be a warm day. So I know you talk about execution. This will be my last question. Are you a Newt Rockne-esque guy in the locker room? I think I've overheard. It seems to me like you're more just like, here's what we need to do. Let's go out and do it. Are you like the bulletin board material or not?
I think you'd probably have to ask the players of that one to see exactly, how they feel about it. I think it's, we have such a young team, and I think one of the games I made them over emotional, the Westchester game, walking out of there. And sometimes you don't want to do that to a team that's really trying to focus on their assignments that it's still fresh and brand new to. So I'm an emotional person, so you've been around me long enough. It's hard for me to hold back. I kind of wear my emotions on my sleeve, and so does my team. So I don't think any of us run from it, but you'd have to ask them exactly how the pregame stuff goes. I think you can't get close enough in there, you could probably hear.
Maybe I will ask you. I lied. I do have one more question, and it revolves around coaching. I was so excited to see Joe Kimball on your staff this year. I've been friends with some of his sons for a long time. They're in a great band, by the way, Romantic Era. And obviously, your coach at Mercer's longtime coach, and then the AD there. What has it meant bringing in someone, not just with a head coaching experience, but the experience, in this area on your staff?
Yeah, there's not a person Joe doesn't know. Look, Coach Kimball he does more for me on a daily basis, because I don't know that if people that haven't been a head coach before, you get pulled in a lot of different directions, and there's a lot of different things going on.
Is finding that out now.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to balance yourself. You have to have that person, let you know, hey, you're steering yourself in the wrong way. Here's what's going on. Here's a guy that's walked on earth longer than I have, has coached, is a very likable person, has been an AD, a head football coach. I've learned a lot when he was the head football coach when I played, and then coached with him too. So to have him on the staff just for selfish purposes for me has been awesome. His relatability to get back to, because Coach Kimball's a people's person. Anyone that meets him loves the guy. So it's taken a little bit of time to the kids to get out and know him, but he's very valuable in a lot of aspects that don't deal with X's and O's. He's going to kill me for saying that, but he doesn't understand what he brings to the table just from an emotional support standpoint.
Coach Brad Rzyczycki, I appreciate you taking the time. Gannon and Clarion at 1 o'clock coming up on Saturday at McConnell Family Stadium. It's homecoming. We hope to see you there. We'll be back. This is The Blitz, AM 1330, The Fan.